Good morning, everybody, and welcome to PSG of Mercer County. The Professional Service Group of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. And as I always say on Friday, happy Aloha Friday. I'm wearing one of my, 24 or so Aloha shirts. This is one of the good ones. It's made of genuine rayon, so it's really good. It's not like the cheap stuff you find around there. But it's just a fun thing I do. It's Casual Friday in Hawaii, and so I learned about that, and I thought, well, we can do that here in New Jersey as well. So happy Aloha Friday. In addition, it's National Chocolate Covered Raisin Day. And so when it comes to any kind of national day, having a chocolate covered raisin or a box of them is really worth celebrating. Me personally, I like dark chocolate, and that's just what I prefer, but I guess any chocolate covered raisin is a good raisin to me. So PSG of Mercer County, we are here for you. We are here to help you be more efficient and more effective in your own job search. And we do that by providing a number of resources in addition to this program that we put on every week. And so for those of you visiting us for the first time or don't know much about us, we do have our LinkedIn group. Our LinkedIn group is called PSG of Mercer County. Just about everything we do is called that. So as you search around for us. So when you're on LinkedIn, do look for our LinkedIn group. And if you're not yet a member, we have over 1,700 members in our LinkedIn group. They are all people that have been to one of these meetings at least once, either in person, which we've done for many, many years, and also virtually. And so when you find the group for the first time, there's a join button. That's true for all of those LinkedIn groups, so pick the join button. But you won't be immediately admitted. You'll be put in pending mode. And the reason why is we will check attendance, our attendance records, to make sure that whoever requests to join does indeed, those are the ones that we allow in, that they were here at least once before. We're trying to keep just the name collectors, the list collectors out, people that are just collecting names and groups only for their own benefit. So the 1,700 plus that are in our group, they're all people that get and understand the value of networking and connecting and interacting with people on LinkedIn. So that's why we have that little one limitation. Once in our group, maybe write a brief introduction to introduce yourself or anything else to be active on LinkedIn. You might have gotten an email from a recruiter about a terrific position that's just not relevant to you. But if it looks good and relevant to somebody else, copy it and then paste that into a discussion in LinkedIn in our group, and you'll start having more activity and you'll be sharing with others. So that could be helpful as well. Another resource we have is our website. Our website is psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. It's more than just a landing page. It is over 120 pages of content. There's a lot of information that is in our website, so go take a look. On the right side of every page is a link for YouTube, and you can click on our YouTube channel. And our YouTube channel has 131 videos. They're topical videos, all sorts of topics. They're primarily recorded from our presentation over the last 3 years. And so if you have missed a topic, you want to revisit a topic, go look at our YouTube channel, scroll through, you'll find the presenters and the topics that have allowed us to record their programs. So that may be another good resource for you as well. In just a moment, I will be turning over the meeting to our presenter this morning, LaPora. I'm so happy that she's here. So the little bit of ground rules, nice and easy. Keep your microphones on mute. Obviously, it doesn't pertain to you folks right here, but those of you virtually, keep your microphones on mute. It's just to make sure there's no accidental background noise that comes through, any accidental interruptions. If we do hear that, we may mute you just to keep it smooth that way. If you have a question, you have a couple of options. If you've got a question for LaPora, you can do so. You can unmute and just politely interrupt to say, excuse me, I've got a question. Or what you can do is you can type the question in chat and one of us will read it for you on your behalf. And if you do that, just write the word question ahead of it, because a lot of people will be putting their introduction and contact information. If we see the word question, it's a little bit of a flag for us to make sure that we grab your question and respond accordingly. So those will be our ground rules for today. And so with that, very pleased, PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome LaPora Lindsey. LaPora is a nationally recognized speaker on the topic in workforce development with a master's in public administration and a bachelor's in organization communication. Along the way, she's earned several certifications, including Certified Workforce Development Professional and Certified Emotional Intelligence Trainer, demonstrating a deep commitment to staying up to date with the latest developments and trends in the workforce. LaPora's insights come from extensive experience with diverse backgrounds. In 2022, she published a book called Bottom of the Food Chain, and you can find that on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other places. Combining her experience and knowledge, she cultivates engaging presentations that enable individuals and teams to energize their careers and increase their productivity. So with that, PSG of Mercer County is pleased to welcome career development coach, trainer, and author, LaPora Lindsey. So welcome.
Thank you.
So glad you're here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Good. So thank you so much, David, for the introduction and for the invite. I apologize because I am a walker, but I'm also trying to balance between the camera. So if you see me come over here, but then I briefly come back this way, just because I'm just trying to be mindful. So hello for those of you who are watching online. So today we're talking about rejection. And one of the things that I realized with this topic is that it's been a bit of a challenge, because when people are seeing this topic, this is a topic that a lot of people don't really feel comfortable with upfront with talking about. It's one of those topics which we'll get into, which can be something which can cause a lot of pain. However, one of the things I want you to realize is that I have me down as a facilitator is because I do a lot of interactive exercises and reflective questions, because I want this to be something where, as we're covering everything today, it's items that can be applicable that you can use starting now and then moving forward whenever you are faced with rejection. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. So this is the roadmap of rejection. And one of the things about rejection is that it is a tool for us to be able to succeed. So we're going to go ahead and get to that, the forefront up front. And that is that when you try to avoid rejection, that's that gray road that you see there. You kind of go up and around it. You want to do everything you possibly can in order to avoid the pain. You want to do everything that you can to avoid the negative feelings that you feel when rejection happens. However, along the way, those little marker points right there is the opportunity of perhaps a little bit more development with resiliency. It is development with emotional growth, all of those things. But when you avoid it, we don't grow in those areas. So while there may be some things where you can reach a little bit faster, there may be a lot of other things where you miss altogether. And so it's really important to be able to address rejection, because as you can see, the result is you'll still be able to complete the task at hand, but you'll pick up a little bit more tools along the way. And then that's what we're going to basically be talking about today. So I have a question for you all. Specifically when it comes to job search, how many times do you think the average person is rejected before they hear a yes? You can throw out some numbers and let me know if anybody's typing in the chat what they're typing. 10, okay, that's a good number. Anyone else? Got a 10?
25.
25, okay. 100, okay.
15.
Was it 15?
Yeah.
Okay, got a 15. All right.
Percentage probably would be mindful 98%.
98%. Okay. Depending on how many jobs you're applying for. Yes.
So online, we see a few answers, 20, 15, 7 to 10, 35.
All right.
85% of the time, 50%.
85% of the time. Okay, so I do have it in number form. It's 24 times is around the average time that individuals are rejected before hearing a yes. And sometimes that can be a matter of, like, let's say you're doing like an interview panel and you have 3 people and all 3 people said no to you, like that can also be included in that 24. So the number really does vary a little bit. But there are some domains of rejection that we see on a consistent basis. One being personal, so when you have your personal relationships, your family, friendships, things along those lines. You also have careers, which we're going to be focusing in on the rejection as it specifically relates to careers. So whether you're applying for jobs, if you're applying for promotions, if you're presenting new ideas at work. And then we have business. So if you are pitching, if you are networking, trying to collaborate, all of that can also be forms of rejection. And then education, you got your ACTs, your SATs, your LSATs, your GMATs, your GREs, like all of these different things, getting that high score in order to get into the education or whatever the case may be, the college that you're looking for. And then those are the general transactions as well. So this is just like the daily occurrence. This could even be something like driving, right? You're driving and someone doesn't want to let you in. They basically told you no. That also counts as rejection, right? So these are all of the different forms of rejection that we are facing on a consistent basis. All right, so I have my QR code here because I do love to connect. So I'll put this up at the end as well. But if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to do that just because I want to be able to answer questions as we go. But if for some reason, if there are additional questions that you have, LinkedIn is the primary platform that I like to use. All right, so some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. First, we're really going to define what rejection is. Then we are going to, throughout this whole presentation, we're going to be taking the definition of rejection and applying it to the job seeker aspect, or even if you are already in work and how to apply it there. And then also throughout the presentation, we're going to be looking at different advantages and strategies that you can use after you've been rejected and moving forward, how can you grow from there? All right, so what is rejection? Did you know that I looked up rejection in multiple dictionaries and I couldn't find the definition of rejection, but I did find the definition of reject. So technically, we're going to talk about reject. So it is to refuse to accept, to refuse to consider, to refuse to submit to, or to refuse to take for some purpose or use. So essentially, someone is telling you they don't want you. When we're talking about someone rejecting you, or even when we reject something, there either is something that you don't want or someone that you don't want. And when you think about it like this can sound really personal. It sounds like a personal attack on us, like, you don't want me, you're refusing to accept me. That's initially where our minds go whenever we're faced with rejection, but we're going to talk about how to move past that a little bit. So one of the first advantages of rejection is the resiliency. So with resiliency, when you think about the word resiliency, what do you think about?
Strength.
You're good. What's that? Strength? Okay, that's good. That's good. Anybody else? Persistence, yeah. Anybody else?
Just being able to bounce back.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. A lot of times when people think about resilience, they say, well, not everything has resilience, but you can. And the thing is resilience doesn't mean that you're not faced with rejection. Resilience doesn't mean that you don't hear no's. I remember I had I did an interview one time and the person was really upset at me because I didn't select them for the position, even though I knew them. And she said, you know, I've never been rejected a day in my life for a job that I applied for. And I was like, oh, well.
No, you're ready.
It's like, unfortunately for me, I've been rejected plenty of times, right? And so we had to have that conversation. But because that was the first rejection that she had faced, that resiliency was really tough. So instead of her having that strength and that persistence to bounce back from that rejection, it took her months to recover from it because she hadn't yet adjusted to it. So, and I know it sounds like one of those, okay, so every time I'm rejected, does that mean that, you know, I'm building resilience? And you are building resilience. And you're not even just building resilience with your job, but you're also building resilience as well with other aspects of your life. So it's not just narrowed down to one aspect. The other part, which we'll talk about here shortly, is that another advantage of rejection is that it gives you a signal. It basically lets your body know. When we think about the primal, how rejection was originated, it was based on the fact of a primal need. Whenever you touch something hot and we moved our hands away, it was like, oh no, we can't touch that. That signals to us, okay, so don't touch that anymore. or be careful as you proceed. And it's the same thing when we face rejection in the career aspect. After we apply for a job, it's okay, wait a minute, before we proceed again, is there something that can be learned from this particular situation? And then patience, right? And you think about all of the different inventors who have tried all of these different and amazing projects, but they don't always go through the first time. It takes time after time after time, but just because it takes time doesn't necessarily mean that it's a failure. It simply means that it is a no for now. Let's come back, reevaluate, reconfigure, recalibrate, and move forward from there. And then also being able to explore and grow. You may have heard the saying, or if you haven't, I'll introduce it to you, that a rejection sometimes is a redirection. Meaning that if you are headed in one direction and you're applying to jobs in a certain market, or you're applying to jobs with a certain company and you're consistently hearing no, 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 perhaps that gives you the opportunity to explore. Now, sometimes we don't like to explore. Sometimes we want to stick with where we are. Another story, there was this one company that I was wanting to work for like 10 years. And whenever the opportunity would come, I would apply, wouldn't get the job. So, time would go by, I would apply again, wouldn't get the job. In the interim, of course, I was working at other places, but I was like, I have to work with this company. I absolutely have to. I finally got the job, right? Do you know what happened? It's probably one of the quickest jobs that I ever quit, right? And it was because that rejection was, in a way, trying to redirect me. I felt like to look for different opportunities, but that company was not for me. The alignment wasn't there, right? And so sometimes when you get that rejection, it's an opportunity for you to explore other opportunities elsewhere. Oh, and at any time, if you have questions or comments, just feel free to share. I want to hear from you. I like to do a lot of talking. Okay. All right. So we're going to go back to the primal need of rejection. So there's two things. There's the basic needs, and then you also have social isolation, which honestly is a basic need as well, but I just grouped it separately because I feel like the needs are different here. So when it comes to rejection, when we think about why it hurts, and it is because it is a primal need. Like, think about, for instance, when you're rejected, how do we describe the feeling of rejection?
Sadness, depression.
Yeah, so those are those feelings there.
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sadness, depression,
Yes,
sorry.
so the
Yeah.
audience, yeah.
Anything else?
It hurts.
It hurts, right? And how we describe that hurt, it varies. Sometimes it's a slap in the face. Like, I feel like somebody just slapped me in the face, right? I feel like somebody just punched me in the stomach. Like, I feel like somebody, like, all of these physical characteristics. And when you think about it, there's very few emotions that we feel that we describe that way. But rejection, we do. And the reason why, oh, yes.
Online we have sometimes anger.
Anger, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because that, oh my gosh, and anger in it of itself is a second emotion. So with the anger can come embarrassment, it can come shame, it can come all of these different things, right, that we're feeling. But one of the reasons why we feel that pain is because it goes back thousands and thousands of years, where it was a primal need. So for shelter, for community, for food, to be rejected meant you would not have that. To be rejected meant you had to fend for yourself and possibly even die because you were rejected, because the community of people said, we don't want you. And so because for years and years and years, that was what rejection meant, that is still one of the reasons why our brain takes it as such a painful blow when we are faced with rejection. And then it comes with that social isolation. So if a community back in the day says, no, we don't want you, you don't get the food, you don't get the shelter, you don't get any of that, go find your own. Now when a company says, we don't want you, even though they're not saying you don't get the food, you don't get the shelter, you don't get the community, we still take it there. We go back to that primal need, but I need this community, I need this belonging, I need to be in this industry, I need this position, right? We still go to that, we need it. But we don't necessarily need that community. And we'll talk about some strategies here later, but I just wanted to just kind of to address that part. So when it comes to rejection, one of the things you'll hear me say is that I am not a, I don't believe that you have to be happy all the time, right? Right, it's happy, people who are happy all the time, they actually scare me, because I'm like wondering like, why are you happy like all the time? You gotta have some ebbs and flows going on, right? So validate the experience. And so I want you to acknowledge the fact that rejection hurts. And I'm not telling you to go around and being grumpy saying, oh my gosh, rejection is the worst. But I am saying acknowledge how that makes you feel. That's the first thing you need to do. After you've been rejected for a job, acknowledge that pain, acknowledge that frustration, acknowledge the embarrassment, whatever you feel. You need to give yourself the opportunity to validate that experience, because it's different for everyone and there's a reason why it's there. If we continue to say, oh, well, things are still great and things will work out, we're continuing to avoid it. And then it just builds and it builds and it builds and it builds until eventually it has to come out somewhere. I don't know where it's going to come out, but you have to be able to validate that. So with rejection in the job search, you can see it in your resumes, as far as your resume didn't make the cut, or we don't hear anything at all. Even the ghosting we can try to interpret as being rejection. Interviews, you feel like the interview went really well, or you feel like it didn't go so well, and now you're trying to figure out how to adjust and how to move forward from here. Promotions, maybe your coworker got promoted who you felt like didn't do as much work as you did, or didn't do as much networking as you did. And then networking, when you are out trying to put yourself out there to people, and then in return, you get oh no, I'm not interested, or they just walk away in the middle of a conversation. Or is that just me? Has that only happened to me? You're talking to somebody and they just walk away, right? But it happens, right? And these are all of the different ways that we see rejection in our personal lives. So we talked about some of these feelings as far as depression, loneliness, anxiety, exhaustion, stress, burnout, jealousy. This is not all. There's no way in the world we can put on an all-encompassing list of everything. But these are only some of the emotions that we feel. So I have a question for you. With these feelings, how did those emotions, or if it was just one emotion, how did that affect your judgment, specifically as it relates to the job search? If you felt this after a rejection, how did that affect your judgment moving forward?
Motivation.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Demotivation.
Demotivation, yes, absolutely.
Sometimes depression, and it's hard to bounce back. So
Yeah.
Sometimes you need maybe what you just said about acknowledging that you have that moment and just take it in and maybe give yourself a day and then, okay, next day, let's fight it again, and I think that's the hard part.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So two things.
Okay.
What was Alex's comment?
So,
Folks, maybe if you can use the microphone, but
So, hi, so maybe acknowledge the feeling. I don't know how to do this.
That's all.
And give yourself a day to
Yes.
to soak and to just be depressed or whatever and feel bad. And then the next day you get yourself ready, take a shower, do something different and fun, and give yourself a treat maybe, and say, okay, I can do this, and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
and there are two comments online. One from Kathy, withdrawal.
Yeah.
Tracy said, desperate to apply for all jobs.
Unfortunately, yes.
And there's another from Jacqueline, give yourself some grace.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorite sayings. Absolutely. So there's some great things there, but that's withdrawal being one of them, right? So typically, I'm not gonna apply for any more jobs. I'm done. I'm done for now. Everyone keeps telling me no, right? But that's that overgeneralization that we'll talk about a little bit later. And then applying for multiple jobs. So you know what? They told me no, now I'm going to apply for everything at once, but I'm not even going to tailor my resume, right? That's the other extreme there. We'll talk about that as well. But we see that with these emotions, if we allow these emotions to guide our judgment, how it can affect how effective we are in our next steps. And so that's why it is important to give ourselves that moment, whatever that moment looks like for us, give ourselves that time to address before we start making decisions if we are able to do that, right? Give yourself that moment to validate the experience and then move forward. All right, so we're going to actually dig a little deeper into this. I want you to think of a time where you rejected someone. So we're going to switch it really quick. So think of a time when you rejected someone. Give you a moment. So I got some follow-up questions for you. And you can feel free to answer this, and if you don't feel comfortable with answering it out loud, that's okay. So how did you feel being the person to choose? So you rejected someone. How did you feel being the person who had the power to choose?
Guilty.
Guilty?
Awful.
Awful. Okay.
Too bad.
Feel bad?
Say no, but no.
But what?
But it was the right answer.
Okay. So feeling bad to say no, but it was the right answer. Okay.
You know, yes and no. Yes, because of what you just said, because I didn't feel bad, but I knew it was the right thing to do.
You
for the
didn't
person.
feel bad. Okay.
I didn't feel bad, but I knew it was the right thing for the person. So,
Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the feeling, actually, it's more precise.
Okay. So it didn't feel bad, but it was the right decision to make.
Well,
Right.
I did feel a little bad because I was there at some point, so I had the empathy.
yes.
But I knew that the right answer was the no. So I understand why you're saying
Yes.
you know that it was the right answer.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Actually, not necessarily no feeling.
No feeling? Okay. All right.
Because actually, I mean, even if I think I'm empathic, the thing was, as a professional, I have to move on. So it was a no here, but yes for someone else.
Right.
So to notion of efficiency. So,
Efficiency. Yeah. So even if you tell someone no, sometimes that's a yes for somebody else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. David, there's someone there?
Yeah, we have a couple of comments. One from Mike, powerful, felt powerful.
Oh, okay.
And not feeling I had the right to do it.
Didn't feel they had the right to do it. Oh, it's interesting.
Two different people, and then a third different person. Sympathy, but it had to be done.
Had to be done. I'm hearing a lot of that, in a way. I have one more follow-up question. Actually, two, sorry. So were you able to understand the impact of your decision? See head shakes, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes?
I'm not sure. I don't know the person necessarily that well, and if other things could be happening in the person's life where this could have been devastating or, okay, I'll move on.
Okay, because you don't know them, you don't know all of their life stories, so you don't know the intricacies of the decision you made and how that impacts others. Okay. Last question. Oh, I'm sorry, David, was there anybody online who said anything for that second question? Sorry, y'all.
So one comment, yes, and it was painful.
Oh, wow. Okay. And the last one was, and you don't have to be super, super detailed with this. I don't want you to put your whole business out there. What was your intention behind the rejection? What was your intention?
Finding the right fit.
Finding the right fit, okay?
To close that door, to be able to use any possibility of that happening to that person.
To close the door,
Look at that.
okay? That relationship,
Yeah.
perhaps that potential, okay.
So we have a comment, appropriate boundaries.
Yeah, appropriate boundaries, yeah.
And then from another, from John, courtesy and professionalism.
Okay, courtesy and professionalism, that was their intent, yeah. Absolutely. All right.
I think that's interesting to answer because sometimes it's better to have a no, but you have the answer, than just be lingering and not even hear about it.
Yeah, ghosting.
But if you don't follow up, or even sometimes when you do follow up and people don't respond. Yeah. That I think is hard.
It is, absolutely.
It's better to have a no. Like Anthony said, and so that door is, at least you know what's going on there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's better to have that no than to not know. Absolutely. All right, so when we look at this, we just took a moment to be the rejecter instead of the rejected, right? It gives us the opportunity to see that, specifically when we're talking about career rejection, a lot of times it's very easy for us to take it personally. But after hearing all of your answers with all of these questions, not once did I hear anyone say it was to make this person sad, it was to ruin this person's life, it was to do all of these things. And it's because we're looking at it from a different perspective. We're looking at it from making the right choice, needing to set those boundaries, needing if it's a professional, I didn't ask if it was personal or if it was professional when we're talking about this, but in the professional sense, it's typically for the better. We're making these choices for the better of the company. We feel like this is what is required. I don't remember who, but somebody said one person's yes means a no one person's no means a yes for someone else, right? So here's you said it.
What I would add as well is, I think as a rejector, question us as well in the way it's not only a no, it can be a constructive rejection. I mean, you can construct it. You say no because
Yes.
help the rejected to say, actually, in this context, I was not the right one because of that. Because I think one of the difficulties to be rejected is to not understand why I am rejected.
That feedback.
So I mean, having a no is hard, but having a no and a why of the no is constructive.
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who are online, basically having a no and knowing why you have that no that's what's constructive, because you're getting that feedback and you're able to move forward. And so one of the things that we're going to kind of talk about here are some questions that you can ask in order to be able to, in a way, get your own feedback. Because unfortunately, we can't force someone to tell us. We can ask, right? Putting ourselves in that seat. And sometimes that's hard for us after we hear that no. It's like, oh, okay. And then we get so caught up in that emotion when we talk about that judgment where we just want to withdraw or we just want to apply elsewhere. But sometimes it's good to take a break, take a pause, and then say, okay, I've been rejected. Is there any additional reason that you can provide, right? So these are one of the strategies that we can implement through that rejection. One other thing when it comes to looking at the perspective of rejection, got these two circles here. They're both the circles of rejection, right? It happens because rejection is so close to us. But what can change it is our viewpoint. So now all of a sudden, I know y'all just saw that, right? Like it looks like it's all of a sudden, it looks like they're two, like I changed the size, but I promise you I didn't. All I did was just add two circles around them, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to rejection. What seat are we going to take? Are we going to take a seat where we're looking at it personally, where we're thinking that it's people are only doing it to reject us, or are we taking that other perspective and looking at it from a seat of, this is more observant. What feedback? What can I learn from this particular situation? Oh, and that's the Booth illusion, just in case anybody was wondering. You can go back and Google it. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, so for the rest of our session, which don't worry, I know it sounds like it's going to be extremely long, but it won't be. We're going to go through the focus model, and don't worry, you're not, trust me, I have a short attention span. So with this focus model, where each letter is going to focus on a particular step that's going to move us forward on growing from rejection. So one of the first things is forward with fear. So with forward with fear, this is really about getting past the fear of other people. What do they call it? Like FOMO, because it's like the fear of missing out, but it's the fear of other people, right? Things along those lines. But one of the primary ways in order to be able to get past the fear of other people is to move forward with fear. I'm not saying some people say, get over your fear. I'm not telling you to get over your fear. That's a waste of time personally, because I mean, there's too many things that I'm afraid of that I'm not going to get past. But what I can do is remain afraid and still take action. It saves time. So exposure to those certain things. And you can go about this in two different ways. You can do it in bulk, which there's a little controversy there. We'll talk about it. Or you can take bite-sized action. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. So in bulk is essentially when you are afraid of, in this case, afraid of getting rejected in a certain sense. So what you do is you set yourself up for multiple opportunities to be rejected on purpose. And the reason for this is that you are training your brain of the consequences of what happens after you are rejected. Because our brains are like Velcro when it comes to negative things. Like if I ask anyone in here, hey, tell me a negative story, they're going to start, y'all can start shooting it off. That's just how our brain works. If I say, tell me something positive, it may take a little bit longer. It's more like that, right? That's just how our brain works. We Velcro the negative, and it's because our brains are trying to protect us. So in bulk, it's set yourselves up for the opportunity to be rejected, and then you train your brain that this is what happens. You're okay. You live. You survive. You move on. Taking bite-sized action is something that is more doable, because essentially with this is essentially applying for a job here or there, networking here or there, processing the rejection if it happens, and then moving forward from there. And sometimes it's building up to that point. So if you are, let's say, afraid of being rejected for one particular job, then perhaps you would apply for jobs that you're not as interested in, but you would be okay with having an interview with them, and maybe you're still kind of interested in the company, and you would be okay with accepting a rejection from them and then moving forward from there. So here's a little activity for that. And this isn't necessarily something that you have to do right now, but you can take a picture or write it down and you can do it later. So this is a fear hierarchy action plan. So essentially, the step one is, it's not actually step one. Sorry. So step one is actually, step one is actually just writing down some of the things that you are afraid of being rejected from when it comes to professionally. So for instance, for some people that may be being rejected at a networking event. For some people that may be rejected internally, like if you're bringing up an idea in a meeting. For some people that could be applying for a job at a company that you really, really want to work for. So you're gonna write them all down, okay? Step two, what am I doing? Where's my brain? Step two is, okay, ignore the PowerPoint, sorry. Step two is you're going to
That wasn't your fear.
No, it was not my fear, no, it happens.
Just a different numbering system.
Yes, exactly.
It's perfectly fine.
Step two is now you're going to order them. So we're not talking about financial insecurities. We're not talking about going homeless. We're not talking about those types of fears. We're talking about the rejection fears. Because for me, there are certain levels of rejection that I am more afraid of than others. And this would be the same for you. Now, if you find that you only have one rejection, okay, just write down that one rejection, and then we can break those down into bite sizes into how to eventually get to that point. And what you're going to do is you're going to start with the fear that is your least fearful, and you're going to work towards that rejection first. And after you work towards that rejection and you've addressed it, you work towards the next one, and then you work your way up until you are now addressing the number one fear that you have in regards to being rejected in your career. Sorry all for that numbering system. It's this. Okay. All right, so we talked about O, which is forward with fear. Now we're going to talk F, which is forward with fear. Yes.
So it's like that exercise helps you build resilience?
Yes, helping you build resiliency by not approaching it all at once, but you are slowly doing the things that are more actionable and then working your way up to the things that right now seem like, oh my gosh, this is super scary. So the O is for open-mindedness. And this is about avoiding overgeneralization, over-personalization, and then we're gonna really adjust the perspective for this one. Okay. So for this one, think about statements. So think about statements such as, this happens to me every single time I apply for a job. Does it though? Right? Statements such as, I'll never get a job. Will you? Right? So it's really easy after we're faced with rejection to just group it all as in, this is always going to happen and it's always going to happen to me. But that's not a really healthy perspective, and I'm not saying that you have to be happy all the time. We talked about that, right? But I am saying being able to adjust it a little bit. So the next time you are rejected, one of the things that you can do is it's not necessarily what can I do differently, because sometimes you got your resume tailored, you worked with somebody, sometimes you've done every single possible thing in your power. And the only other question to ask at that point is, what can I learn? What can I learn from this situation? Is it a timing issue? Is it a company culture? What is there to learn from this particular scenario? So that's the one question takeaway for O, for open-mindedness. So we talked about F, which is forward with fear. We talked about O, which is open-mindedness. Now we're going to talk about C, which is cultivation. So with cultivation, this is really cultivating a sense of an environment to be able to grow and to develop whenever you are faced with rejection. You have process your emotions, gratitude, self-care, versus stay positive, keep your head up, and look at the bright side, right? There's a difference there. And the difference is that validation aspect, right? You're processing those emotions. You're grateful for the things you do have, but you're also allowing yourself to grieve the things perhaps that you've lost. If you've lost a job, if you've recently been laid off, right? And then you're taking that time to step away and give yourself some self-care versus, nope, no self-care needed because everything is awesome all the time. I just got rejected. I don't care. But sometimes you do, and it's okay to care. It's okay. So cultivate that environment that allows yourself the opportunity to process that, give yourself self-care, and also gratitude. One of the things for an activity for this that you can implement is simply giving yourself what they call, snacking, emotional snacking, essentially where you remind yourself of the community that you do have. You remind yourself of the loved ones that you have, the supporters that you have, the people who you've had throughout your time who has been really, really helpful for you, especially in your job search. And so whenever you're faced with rejection, you just take a quick little snack, right? Remind yourself with that, and then it just kind of helps for a nice little boost. So we talked about the F, the O, the C, and now we're going to talk about the U, which is unlearning. So for unlearning, we're specifically talking about self-sabotage. Self-rejection is actually more hurtful than rejection of any other person, from any other person, when you think about it. And the reason why is because we don't even move forward. And this is because for us, we say, well, you know what, if I don't try for that job, if I don't apply for this particular opportunity, there's a chance that I could get it, but there's also the chance that I may not. That's a lot easier for us to handle than for someone to actually tell us no. So we don't even, I'm not even going to do it. Like, oh, I'm not going to apply for that job. I could get it. I know I'm qualified, but I may not get it. It's easier than someone to just say, no, you don't have it. And so we have to be able to unlearn how to expose ourselves to conflicting information. That could be surrounding us with other people who are applying for similar jobs, support groups such as this, right, where you learn the ups and the downs of the different aspects of careers. And then also the good feeling versus the bad feelings. Once again, just really being able to adjust and address all of those things that you're feeling here. Making sure that this. Okay, so with this one for unlearn, this is actually an exercise that I have specifically for this. Oh, yes.
It just made me think, imagine it's a lot worse to hear yourself say, I'm a loser, versus someone else say, you're a loser.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't hear that, it could be much worse if you tell yourself you're a loser versus hearing someone else externally say, you're a loser. So we just say it to ourselves, just feed them to it, right? But that's so like, one of the things that I like to talk about is when we're going to do an activity here shortly, but like with self-worth, and it's one of the things about self-worth is being our own best friend. And when it comes to being our own best friend, we don't tell our friends they're losers. Now we do, if you have a good best friend, we are honest, right? There are things that we can work on. And that's what's really important, is to have that balance. And rejection, even though it's painful, it can help us to bring some balance if we're looking for that feedback. Even when we're not getting it from that person directly, we're just looking at that situation as a whole and seeing how can we grow from that. So for the unlearn, this is a great exercise to help with that. It's argue with you. I'm not going to argue with any of you. This is for you to argue with yourself. Kind of how you mentioned as far as with the I'm a loser statement, which is such a powerful statement, because I know that that is a statement that so many people say, that we share with ourselves. I have shared it with myself, right? Like it happens. So this time, these steps are in order. So step one, list in writing any self-critical, and if you're not a writer, that's okay. You can just think about it. Any self-critical thoughts that you've had about rejection. So if you were recently rejected, what was a self-critical thought that you have had about rejection, about that rejection, about yourself? I'll give you a moment. I'm going to take another sip of water. If I start moving too fast, let me know. You just shake your head or something. So step two. Now you're going to use a counter argument. So I'll take the I'm a loser statement, since that was just shared. And if that was your self-critical statement that you say to yourself after a recent rejection, what is the opposite of that? And you can be constructive with it.
I can be a winner in another situation.
What's that?
I mean, the opposite of I'm a loser is I could be a winner in a different situation.
I love that. I could be a winner in a different situation. Yeah, because that's that balance there.
The whole thing about fitting, so you were not the right fit for that job, it doesn't mean that it's for all jobs, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just having that right fit, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be the right fit for every job. I know we feel like we are, but if everybody feels like they are, then everybody is or isn't, right? And then the last part, honestly, step 3, is just repeat. So whenever you're faced with rejections, just come up with counter arguments. And essentially what this is going to do, you start again, this is about training our brains. The advantage of rejection is really about training your brain to the point where after you're faced with rejection, we're not aiming for the be happy all the time. We are always amazing. We're not aiming for that. We are aiming for, I love that statement, instead of, oh, I didn't get the job, I'm a loser. It's, you know what? I could be a winner in the right situation or with the right company, right? And then that, once it becomes a forced habit, eventually it becomes a natural habit where we slowly start to process it. But give yourself the opportunity to be angry, to be upset, whatever the case may be, but still utilizing those statements.
And probably as well, the work we have to do on ourselves is the fact that train our brain to manage expectation.
Yes.
Because higher we think we are best fit, more we think that, more the rejection impact will be bigger.
Yes, absolutely. Managing those expectations, being more realistic about it, and it kind of goes back to that that illusion there. Was like when you look at it from a wider scope, it really helps you to manage it versus thinking that rejection is only on you. But when you look at it for, I'm not the only one being rejected here. I'm not the only one affected by this decision. There are, when it comes to businesses, it's not just me and the job, it's the company, it's the structure, it's the culture. And so that rejection is only a small part of that. Even though it's really big to me, it's only a small part of the overall picture.
You know, I also think when we're talking about the jobs, if you're far along in the process, you're down to the last two candidates, the impact is so much greater than from just responding via online, or you had a call with a HR, but you never got to the hiring manager. You can't really attach yourself. You shouldn't really attach yourself, as opposed to if you are one of two candidates, you didn't get selected, then rejection impacts you so much more.
You're right, absolutely. So for those of you who are online, basically what we're talking about here is that when you're further along in that interview process, when you're like the top two candidates, how that rejection does become more impactful than if you're applying online and you don't hear anything, or perhaps you do and it's rejection versus now you're a little bit more invested, and sometimes they even want you to complete projects, things along those lines. That is when I would say it's really important to be able to validate that experience. Because the more you validate it, the more comfortable you'll become with that. One of the things that my mentor told me when I first started my business, like it was really hard for me to start going through like different types of rejection. He was like, give yourself 5 minutes. It's like 5 minutes? Like this is my first time dealing with this level of rejection. I need like a day, right? So I gave myself that time. And that's one thing to really consider there, is that depending on the level of rejection, depending on the effects that it has on you, perhaps your family, being able to give yourself that time to be able to process it and then figure out how you can effectively move forward. So that is such a great comment. Thank you for sharing that.
I think along with that is maybe the validation helps, like for you not to beat yourself up so much, because when I use the example of give yourself a treat in quotes, is because maybe I have this thing about, okay, you need to do your obligation first, and then afterwards you go relax or do whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so I wouldn't go and do something I just want to because I have the obligations to take care of first.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are on a day that you are validating, you see that, you know, you just have to deal with whatever, sometimes it's better to just call the day off, call a day and do something that will make you feel more like a person, something that you like, you enjoy, and that will bring you maybe some joy, even if it's for that moment, like go dancing, whatever it is. And then that helps you to get that confidence back. And then you're okay. It's maybe the whole thing about like, you're not the right fit for that moment, or you got that rejection, that moment, because of that specific reason, but not because you're not an amazing professional, or you don't have great skills, but it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah,
So I think not beating yourself up is hard.
It is hard. Not beating yourself up is hard. For those of you who are online there, it's difficult. One of the things that I will share is one of the titles, the self-given titles that I have is a professional job seeker. And the reason for that is because my husband's active duty Navy. And so with that comes a lot of moving. I would say within a 10-year span, we moved 6 times. And so with that, there was no job that I ever had that I was allowed to take with me. So it was always a matter of quit and then find jobs. And when you find the job, it's not just a find the job, it's a reject, 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 find, nope, sorry, reject, reject, reject type of trajectory, right? And it's consistent. But that's why I feel like one of the ways that I've been able to grow, one of the ways I've been able to put myself out there is by utilizing all of that, processing all of that information and saying, okay, for all of these jobs, this is typically what happens when I'm rejected, and this is typically happens when I'm not. Is there a way for me to streamline this process a little bit? Sometimes I get close and sometimes I don't. But one of the things I will say is just being open to learning from that has been one of the most useful tools for me, which is why I'm so passionate about helping others to learn from rejection as well, because it's no fun, but it's an experience that I don't necessarily welcome, but I'm like, okay, you can, whatever, let's do this, right?
You can take it.
Yeah, I can take it for sure. The resiliency I'll come back eventually. I thought, did we miss one? No, we didn't. Okay. Oh, okay, look at us, just cruising on through. All right, so for strategy, so this is the S. So we talked about F, which is forward with fear, which was the fear hierarchy action plan. We talked about O, which is the open-mindedness, asking ourselves that question, what can I learn? We talked about C, which is cultivating an environment where you are able to process your emotions, you are able to show gratitude and have self-care versus what is referred to as toxic positivity, where you have to be happy all the time and not really experience anything. We talked about the U, which is unlearning, which is essentially how to get out of that self-sabotage mindset when you're creating counter arguments in order to do that. And now we're at the final letter of focus, which is S, which is for strategies. One of the first things to do, and this goes across the board, is to know your baseline. And by your baseline, I mean this is about self-awareness. This is about knowing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, resiliency can't work. Because resiliency is bouncing back, but if you don't know what your baseline is, you don't know what you're bouncing back from, right? So if you have the opportunity to get to know yourself before you start applying for jobs or before you start putting yourself out there with networking and facing rejection, take the time to get to know yourself, how you are, what does your typical stress level look like, how do you act when there's no additional stress factors, whether good stress, bad stress, however you want to label it. What do you typically act like? How do you typically carry yourself? And then when you are faced with that rejection, you can kind of get a sense of how your actions change or how your behaviors or wording or whatever that case may be. The S is a strategy, make an action plan. We covered quite a few things today. Not everything is going to work for every person, whether it be for you personally or your situation. But creating an action plan as far as the next time I'm rejected, based on what we covered today, perhaps this is one of the strategies that I'm going to use or one of the exercises that I'm going to use the next time I am rejected, or maybe I'm going to use all of them and go ahead and start working on training your brain, because remember, there are multiple domains of rejection. So you don't have to apply for a job to train your brain on that. It's a matter of what area do you feel like working on first. And then that last strategy is replenishing those feelings of connection. We talked about social snacking, which is essentially reminding yourselves of the community that you have. This is a community here. This is one of the many. You have other ones. You have loved ones, families, friends, other perhaps social networking platforms that you can use. Because rejection is, a big part of it is you can't be a part of this. And so because you can't be a part of that, you remind yourself of what you are a part of. And then that helps to replenish those feelings of rejection in the interim. It doesn't take the place of it, but it does help. So for the last activity, this is about reviving self-worth after rejection. And this one takes the longest time, but it's not going to be here forever. Don't worry. And it's up to you if you want to share. All right, and these are also in order. So step 1, 3 to 5, doesn't matter. So 3 to 5, you're going to write down or think about 3 to 5 characteristics about yourself. They cannot be based on physical appearance. So we're thinking about things like critical thinking or empathetic. So try to keep it in the professional space, but 3 to 5 characteristics about yourself. The next step is now you're going to rank them. We do a lot of ranking in this workshop.
Based on what?
So you're ranking them based on the one that you feel most comfortable with or you appreciate the most. You don't have to commit to it permanently. It's just a temporary commitment. The last step, if you did 5, if not, you can just, honestly, for the time being, let's just choose one. And write about it in detail. So why is it important? Why is that particular attribute or skill important to you? And how does it influence your work life? Would anyone like to share? You don't have to, but if you would like to, I would love to hear it.
So, do I do all of them or?
Just the last
The
part.
last one?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a sense of being a good team player. And for me, it's important because I like being part of a community. And I think I can contribute a lot, but so everybody else. And I like the idea of, even if I have a little bit, like a very small part of something really big, I enjoy that, being part of it and being able to help and have my contribution done. So that's it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So I picked the term calm. And the reason I chose that is that I think in a lot of the situations we go into, especially if you're a manager or you go into a chaotic environment, it's really important to be able to be calm, even if everything's falling apart. You want to show the people around you that it's not that you don't care, it's that you're not going to get rattled by it, that you work your way through it, and that you take it, you break it down individually, or you break it into components and address each one, rather than be overwhelmed by whatever the situation is.
I love that.
That's good for chaotic times.
That is. Yeah.
It's sure.
Anyone else? I'll put my eyes on. I don't want to make eye contact and make anyone feel like I'm trying to make you come up here. But if anybody else wants to share, you can feel free.
I can go.
And I did check online. No one has posted anything or requested either.
Okay.
I can go. Not sure everyone.
Thank you
too.
too.
Hey, so the one I picked up is adaptable. Why it's important is, our life, our environment is continuously moving. So adaptability is key, whatever, private life, personal life. And as well, why I think it's important to me and how it influences my life, professional, personal, is I think is linked to continuously learning and improving, actually. So learning, improving, whatever, again, same in company, we start small, we go up, we become manager, and every time you need to adapt, to learn, and to grow. So that's why.
It's a burden for me.
Thank you. And no one's written anything online? I know sometimes it takes them a little bit longer.
Nothing else online.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you all for sharing. I hope that this exercise was helpful. One of the reasons why I like to end off on this exercise is because with rejection, not only is it easy to take things personally, but a lot of times we tie our value and what we're able to bring based off of external contingencies. So appearance, salary, our social circles, our achievements, all of those things. But what you just shared does not deal with that. It deals with one part of who you are. And it's really important to remind ourselves of the value that we bring, the contribution that we make. Because even if, let's say, multiple people said calm, multiple people said adaptable, like multiple people said all of these things, still how you are belonging or contributing, even if it's a tiny bit, how you do that is going to be different. You're going to approach it differently. The perspective that you bring is going to be different. So when we talk about the advantages of rejection, we hear no, 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 no a lot, right? But it doesn't mean not ever. It could mean not now, maybe, come back in a year, right? It just means no for right now, especially when it comes to our professional lives. But with some planned effort, as far as being a little bit strategic on when we apply, whether you're taking those bite-sized efforts or if you want to go in bulk, hey, more power to you. Less self-sabotaging or less self-rejecting, as far as don't just stop it at yourself. The example that was used earlier, I'm going to go back to it because I thought it was so powerful. Instead of just saying I'm a loser, I'm not saying allow somebody else to call you a loser, but you put yourself out there and see what happens. Because a lot of times we're more self-critical and more self-rejecting than other people are. And then be sure to widen your perspective and realize that even though rejection is happening to you, so it is, you will take it on a personal level to a certain extent, just also realizing that there's a bigger scope out there when it comes to our profession, and people aren't saying they're not saying I don't want you. They're saying we're just looking for a cultural fit. We're looking for someone has the right management role, who has the adaptability, who can make those contributions, who does have the calmness that we need at this time, and using that as an opportunity to be able to grow and build that resiliency and build our emotional intelligence from there. At this time, I want to see what questions that you all have. I know you've been asking questions throughout. But if there are any additional questions, this time is dedicated to you. It doesn't have to be a question, it can also be a comment.
LaPora, it's John Sampson. I wondered in your statistic that you brought up at the beginning of the presentation of you get rejected 24 times. For us who are out hunting for a job, when we pitch a resume and never get back anything, would that be a rejection in that statistical mix?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think so, because it was ghosting. I would consider that to be ghosting, and that's still relatively new. And with ghosting, it happens for multiple reasons, not necessarily it wouldn't necessarily be classified as rejection. So no, I wouldn't, unfortunately, group that in with that. And I have a resource here. I'd have to email it to you. I don't know, David, can I email it to you?
You can take care of that later.
Okay, perfect. And I'll send that to you, but I don't think that they included ghosting. Did that answer?
I get it. Just while I got the floor, do you have any other thoughts about how we might find out more about why we got an actual no? Because I welcome the comments of the people on the call. Most of us never hear anything, and I include in that the comment, we went in another direction. You know, it doesn't really help us at all. Not that they should, but we wish they would.
Right. And I understand that. So there's nothing wrong with asking, honestly. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, well, don't say hey, but you know, in a more politically correct terms, just basically saying, you know, I appreciate you letting me know. Is there any additional information you can provide in order for me to improve, whether it be future resumes or future interviews? One of the things that I do as well, or that I have done in the past, is when I'm applying to certain jobs, this is specifically for the federal, I don't know if anyone's applying for federal work, but if they give you a point of contact, like a person that you can reach, it is saying, well, you know, hey, if you have applied, I've applied for jobs in the past, and I'm just curious, how do I get past this point? Because I'm always stuck with whatever that point is. I always get to an interview and I don't pass it, or I always get to the resume and I don't get to the interview. And I found that people are pretty open for the most. There's been a lot of people that haven't been, but for the most part, people have been very open with providing me with insight and details as far as with, if they had time, these are the particular steps that you need to take moving forward. The other thing that I recommend as well is that you don't have to connect with people when you are applying for jobs, because you never know when a job opportunity is happening. So LinkedIn is a professional platform, so being able to connect with people in advance, connect with potential hiring managers, connect with potential recruiters, and figure out from them, hey, do you have 15, 30 minutes to answer my questions, or for a coffee, or whatever the case may be. This is my industry or position that I'm looking for, and I'm wondering what will it take for me to get in with your company in the future. So don't be afraid to have those conversations before you apply for the job or before the job is posted, because by then they may already have someone in mind. Not that they always do, but the chances are high. Did that answer your question? I don't know where to look. Did I answer your question?
LaPora, are you familiar with the premium account in LinkedIn?
Yes.
I saw there are a number of things they tell you in there about your candidacy. You think it's worth $30 a month?
I don't know how to answer that question. So I'm going to preface this by saying, I mean, whatever you decide to do financially, that is 100% your call. I think one of the strongest things, whether you have a premium account or not, is developing connections. And you can do that with or without a premium account. That is the primary purpose of LinkedIn, is to develop those connections. And sometimes people with premium accounts don't even do that. But if you're going to develop those connections, it could be helpful. But as far as with having the insider knowledge I have a premium account, but as far as with having that insider knowledge, I can't say that it's necessarily been that helpful. The most helpful thing has been me reaching out to people, having those conversations, and then I really get some insider knowledge as far as half the time the jobs that are posted aren't really what the jobs are anyways. They're very different, but I wouldn't know that if I didn't have those conversations. So I recommend, whether or not you go with a premium, is that you start reaching out to people and start having some conversations. Any other? Oh, yes.
Okay, I'd like to say one last thing, I promise.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for the theme, because I think it's a very hard one to talk about. Not too many people like even acknowledging, much less talking about it. So for us that are here, it's really important. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want to add one thing too. When I saw the topic, I thought it was one thing of all the times I've been looking for work we've never talked about. So I also thank you. And I had one particular, I've tried to turn some of the rejections into positives. And I had one story that I thought was worth sharing. So I got a rejection from a talent acquisition. I hadn't interviewed, I hadn't done anything, I just sent in a response. Well, they actually got back to me with a name at the bottom of the message, as opposed to from company. And he had written to me and said, thank you for your interest in blah, blah, I'm applying for the job. We realized there are a lot of companies that you could have applied to, but the fact you took time. Now, it was a form letter, but I don't care because it was fairly personalized. I didn't put his name on it. So I actually wrote back to him. I said, hi, Terry. I'm going to give you kudos for putting your name on a rejection email. Most of the companies that I get a rejection response from address the response in a similar way, but are unwilling to put their name on it. For that very reason, I have a better impression of your company, rightly or wrongly, than many of the other companies I've presented my qualifications to. I see by your LinkedIn profile that you've only been there since August. I hope the position is going well for you. If you have, and this is where I turned it in my direction, if you have recommendations for other companies I should pursue, please let me know. I'm focused on, and I went into what I was looking for. And I said, thanks and best of luck to you in your career. He actually wrote back to me and said, thank you for the kind words, David. It's great to know that the little things are noticed, especially when the message I'm delivering is not overly positive. Regarding companies that you can pursue, I'm not sure if any of these companies are hiring for positions that match your skills, but they're worth checking out. These are companies I know and that I highly respect, but he listed 8. So he gave me a list of 8 companies. Now this is from somebody I do not know, have never met, and have only sent in my qualifications to. So now it's given me the thought that every time I get one of these, I'm going to do this exact same thing. And then on one other rejection, the woman wrote back to me and, to let me know. And I actually wrote back to her and I said, well, thanks, but I really didn't get close enough to the position to get that attached to it. So sometimes you got to keep it real.
Yeah, I love that. So I have a follow-up question for you. So what was your reason for deciding to respond back to them via email?
Well, it may not come as a surprise, but I've done this before.
Who hasn't?
Well, no, I've responded before, and it was with a woman who was a HR person up in Massachusetts for a job up there. And I just remember writing to her, and it was a similar kind of message. So when they write back a very nice and kind message, it makes me feel compelled to at least acknowledge that, because these people in talent acquisition aren't stupid. They know how what a bad light they're painted in sometimes. So when they do go above and beyond, to try to make they make their companies look good. And that's what I wish the higher level execs in the companies would realize, is that, that's the impression that people have of their companies. I mean, not the investors, but the people that are trying to work for those companies. So if your HR group puts forth a good face, then at least the people that are looking for work there have a good impression of them. So anyhow.
Love that. Thank you. Got to reach out. Got to have these conversations. Because you brought a good light to it. Like we're all human, right? Whether they work in talent acquisition, HR, like we're all human, and we need connection. Rejection is about the rejection of that community, but we need that. Yes.
I thought it was particularly interesting, the follow-up that you did on the second thank you, like when you asked him to if he see fit another position, opening position in that same company, to get back to you. I thought that was really good, because I wouldn't have thought of that. I was like, it's no, okay, I'm going somewhere else. And maybe now it's like we heard in another past conferences, was to follow up and not stop following up until you get it. So
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely.
taking notes.
Yeah, the key though is that you got a contact information. That
Exactly.
doesn't happen when you
That's
get,
true.
especially the form response. You don't get a contact information, so that was really great.
It was great from the person, but then that he followed up after, like the second follow-up, I thought it was really good on your side, because you can only control your side. You can control if the person, I agree with you. It's much better when you have someone who's actually signing and taking, saying, okay, I am the one saying, even though I'm talking in the name of the company, I'm not making this decision on my own, but you can only be responsible for your attitude, not the company's attitude.
Absolutely. So for those of you, Oh,
I'll just get it to
Oh,
myself.
okay.
I wanted to ask one more
Ooh.
thing. Just for the sake of the person that asked the question, just for the sake of the person that asked the question before, better, more, closer? Oh, my. All right, thank you, David. Just for the sake of the person that asked the question earlier, I've been given feedback recently on applications that I've applied for in early January that I'm now getting responses. So I don't know if you've all received some of those kind of same feedback. I have an interview Monday for a job I applied to like January 5th.
Oh, wow. It's a long process.
Very long time. So just to let you know, like that process is going, and I've also received some feedback that jobs are now eliminated. I would say I got 5 different responses. That's a lot, considering, you know? So
Yeah.
just to give you just some feedback.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Good to know. Yeah.
David?
Stretch.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I have. That's my LinkedIn again, if you want to connect on LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I also wanted to invite you all to, if you wanted to leave a review, whether on my LinkedIn page or Google review, feel free to do that. Or send me an email and give me like a complete honest review. If it's a terrible review, just send me an email. If it's good, just post it.
No, yeah, we said it.
Would you put your cover slide up? Would you be able to put this one up? I just wanted to take a picture, because I'd like to do a thing on LinkedIn.
You could send me a PDF of the slides I could post. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, LaPora, thank you so much. I was so excited about hearing this presentation and this topic, and I was so pleased. I'm going to have to write this for a Google review too, with just how engaged you got everybody. We were so involved, even some people online. So thank you very much. And what I really appreciated right from the beginning, you explained that rejection is normal. It's primal. It's ingrained in all of us. So we shouldn't see this as negative as it might feel sometimes. There are some advantages to that. So I really kind of appreciate how much you level set this. This is normal, natural, and there are ways that we can manage it a little bit better. And being resilient. Well, in job search, yeah, we have to be resilient, because job search is a process that for most of us is filled with a high percentage of rejection. And in most cases, that's not personal, but we feel it. And so we just need to manage that a little bit. I do have one personal observation. We do get a lot of rejections in job search. It's just part of the process. And we want to know why. And my feeling is that I've been through a lot of interviews on both sides. The reason why is very subjective. It's really in the eyes of the person who's interviewed you, or maybe you went to 2 or 3 interviews. And the reason why they rejected you may have nothing to do at all with the very next interview that you go on with the next company. So don't get too hung up with it. You know, if you say, well, why did I not get the job? And they'll say, well, you wore a red shirt and I like blue. Well, the next manager may like blue or may like red. So you just don't know. So don't really get too hung up, but it's good to be able to decompress a little bit with the exercises that LaPora gave us. So thank you. And she did let me know we were whispering to each other. She will provide the slide deck with us. We are recording this presentation as well. Our contact information is online and up here as well. Want to let you know what's going on the next couple weeks just before we officially wrap up. And as we do wrap up, if you want folks who are virtual, we'll keep the session open. You can network among yourselves. And we here are going to network among ourselves here. There are cookies in the back. That's for the benefit of those of you who are here, and saying to the people who are virtually, you could have been here and had cookies. So we welcome everyone to come virtual in person as much as possible. But what's coming up the next couple weeks? Next week, March 31st, can't believe it's the end of the quarter. Lynn Williams will be here. Lynn is our fairy godmother, or our guardian angel, and she will be talking about LinkedIn for job seekers. So LinkedIn, obviously a very important product and tool to use, came up a couple times today. She has done a tremendous amount of research in just how LinkedIn really works. She's one of the gurus of LinkedIn. If you have the opportunity to come and attend next week, please do so. That's the 31st. Then April 7th, the following week, I'm doing a presentation for us here, Overcome Legal Discrimination in Your Job Search. And so that's what we will be talking about, overcome legal discrimination. There is illegal discrimination, but there's legal as well. So that's what's going on over the next 2 weeks. I also want to let you know, this Tuesday, New Jersey Job Seekers is not able to meet on Tuesday evening. So if that was on your calendar, you'll want to just, understand it's not going to be presented. And then you can also visit our cousin organizations. PSG of Central Jersey meets Mondays at 10:30 virtually, psgcnj.biz. And PSG of Morris County meets Wednesdays at 9:30, psgmc.org. And they also open their session for early networking as early as 8:30 in the morning. So that's what's going on. I want to once again thank LaPora for coming to attend with us and visit with us and present this topic. Thank you. All that applause is on the recording, so we have proof. And until we get to see you all next time, we will simply say, bye, everybody.